When I'm not living in a constant state of confusion over why chocolate milk doesn't totally work with cereal, on paper it seems like it should. I like to answer questions that get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Hey, I have a lesson video request. I was watching one of those guitar course demos, and the fellow says that it's common for experienced players to hit stray strings, and it's your muting that makes it all sound right. So is it true that even better players are hitting unintended strings, and how do you mute with either hand? This is 100% true, and it's something I did not realize at first, okay? I think it's a combination of muting and actually just confidently hitting the string. So let's talk about this a little bit. What that means is when I first started playing, I thought that maybe you were really just supposed to, if I want to hit the 7th fret on the G string, I'd hold the fret down, and then I just do that, right? And that's kind of like the distance of my picking hand. I do want to mention the caveat that there are totally different types of players, right? And super technical players will be very more precise, but I think for what I've experienced and like the other professional guitar players that I know, we actually kind of really hit a bunch of strings even if we're only aiming for one. So when I first started out, I was like, all right, I really gotta look at my ring finger here to make sure it's fretted right, and then I have to look at my pick and make sure it just hits the string, okay? And then eventually you just get better, and then you can just, right? And you just swing at it and you hit it. And for the longest time, I was like, how do people actually do that? And this is not something I ever once practiced. It just kind of eventually started happening, where a combination of both of your hands will mute the strings that you don't want to sound out, okay? Now, I think it's a little bit more than just being like, okay, like if I'm just aiming for the 7th fret, I'm gonna, have a stroke that comes down and maybe I'll hit the D string and the G string and the B string, and I'm just gonna hear that, right? So right there, that's all because if you look at my fretting hand right here, all the pressure is coming down on the fret that I want to ring out. It's laying down, that same finger that is holding the fret is laying down on the string beneath it, the B string, so I can't hear that. And maybe I'm using a different finger, in this case like my pointer finger, to mute the string below it. So when you hear it by itself, you might actually get harmonics around it, but in context, when you hit all of them, you're just gonna mostly hear what you're going for, okay? Now again, it's not just having that fretting hand mute the unintended strings around there, it's also being able to hit the guitar with confidence. And what I mean by that is I have a lot of students, and I've had a lot of students throughout the years, where they try to play something and they play with a super, super light touch, okay? And I don't think I'm a heavy-handed player at all, especially when I first started out. I would always be very meticulous about like, all right, if I wanted to play something, I would play like that, and then eventually it's like a... Okay, so something like that where it's just like you're really confidently hitting the strings, and when you confidently hit that and put some pressure, put some power into it, your timing becomes better, and then the tone that you do get just really starts to ring out a little bit more. If you're playing very tentatively, which again is fine for certain types of music and for certain situations, but if you're playing tentatively because that's the only way that you know how to play, when you make a mistake, it's really gonna amplify that mistake, right? So when you're actually coming down with a little bit more force, you're really improving your odds of actually getting the sound that you're probably going for. That almost kind of seems counterintuitive, but just trust me, it works. So one of the main points of advice that I give a lot of my students is to actually like put some power into it. Because again, there's some people who just naturally, they just want to grab a guitar and they just want to just let it rip, right? And then just kind of like hit everything as hard as they can, players like that might break strings over time, right? I rarely ever break strings, but I still feel like I put a good amount of force into my playing, especially when I'm playing, I guess my style of what I usually play at gigs and stuff is more of like an acoustic. I wouldn't say that's like a heavy-handed thing, but that's definitely like I'm coming down with a good amount of force, and just that right there, over time, really helps you develop into hitting at least generally the area of where you're trying to go. Never ever getting caught up on, I just have to hit the G string and the G string alone. Because right there, for again, my style and like a lot of different styles of playing, that's fine, but you focus too much on just what you need to do Whereas just thinking of that, that's just one part of like a bigger whole. And then as soon as you like kind of really dig into the strings, your tone changes. A lot of times it gets better. You know, that's up for debate for a lot of salty people commenting on other people's playing and stuff like that. But your tone does change, and kind of the way that you approach all different types of technique, right? Like my vibrato was like really trash until I started being able to play like this, because it kind of empowered me to like, all right, this is what I'm going for. I'm trying to hit that G string. I'm probably going to hit the D and the B string around there, but I know that my fretting hand isn't going to let that come out. The other part of this answer to this question is that I think a lot of players use palm muting a lot more than they realize they will when they're first starting out. Again, the first probably like 2 or 3 years I even played guitar, I never palm muted. And again, what that is you just shake the side of your hand, put it closer to the bridge, whether it's acoustic or electric. And instead of playing like the minor scale, like you'd play it muted, right? Like that kind of sound as compared to sustained. For the longest time, I never really put any thought into that kind of muting, right? But the combination of muting with your fretting hand and muting with your palm and your picking hand is what really allows your playing to just kind of coalesce and just clean up. Again, depending on the style that you're going for, but I think this is probably a good general advice, I guess, that, you know, I wish somebody would have told me. Because again, I didn't palm mute for years. I didn't even truly grasp what it was, because it's kind of a bad name, because this isn't really the palm of your hand, it's really the side of your hand. Whatever, that's a totally different conversation. But yeah, once I really started kind of palm muting it, then I guess the target zone of where I was going also kind of shrunk, right? Because I'm not out in space trying to just hit the G string. Like, if you're just out in space trying to like, that's super daunting for a beginner to do, because like the space between these strings is so small when you're starting out. Again, I totally remember being like, I'm never gonna have the fine dexterity to do this. Eventually, you shorten the stroke of where you're going instead of playing like this and reaching into the string set and trying to do that. And then you realize that you do have a pretty wide margin of error for when you're just aiming for that G string, especially when you can mute the surrounding strings, okay? So again, I think that's a good spot to practice, is like, you know, maybe like the 7th fret, that D note on the G string. I think that's a great spot to practice because you can really get a lot going on there. You can kind of just aim for the higher part of the guitar, and then kind of like incorporate it with a bunch of other stuff. Work on your vibrato. It's in the middle of the guitar, so, you know, a lot of people don't have problems with like the lower power chord stuff because there's so much margin for error below and above. It's the middle strings that I think a lot of people struggle with. And again, that's just something that you work on, and eventually your hands will just find a way to sound better with practice. You can speed that up a little bit by concentrating, being thoughtful about what you're doing, but don't worry about it for practicing. It's gonna get better. Couldn't stand this guy when I first started guitar 6 months ago, but rediscovers him. Putting his personality quirks aside, I'm actually learning my way around the fretboard, so thanks. No, thank you. Got a question for you, Sean. At this point, do you still practice guitar, or do you just play it? Are you still learning new things, or have you mastered it? Have not mastered it at all. I will say that I'm like, if I never get any better at guitar, I have achieved my goals as a guitar player. I only ever wanted to play guitar to be able to accompany writing songs and kind of like using the instrument as more of like a storytelling device. Like, it's definitely cool that I've become known as like a guitar channel, I suppose, but that was never what I set out to do. And because of that, I've gotten a lot better at guitar than I ever like anticipated that I would. And by no means am I ever close to mastering it. And I'm always learning things accidentally. I think that's the difference now from maybe myself like 7 to 10 years ago. It's like back then I was like, I'm gonna actively try to like learn modes or learn different arpeggio shapes or really try to like get faster for some stupid reason that like I never really vibed with, but I thought I should. And now I'm at the point where like I can play the things that I want to play, and even though that's not even a master, some people wouldn't even consider it that good, I am 100% secure with my playing, and I feel like I can do the things that I want to do. So, do I practice? That's, debatable. I think I just kind of do a lot of noodling, and I do a lot of playing. So I'm always, playing songs with friends of mine. I'm always working on new music. And if I do practice at this point, it kind of becomes a noodling session very quickly. But I think, at the end of the day, I do still play a lot of guitar. So I am improving, but at this point, there's not like a facet of guitar that's like, oh, I really, really feel like I need to achieve that. And if I just put that kind of effort into it, I'm going to get this kind of payoff. It's like I can play guitar. I'm always getting better. There's always more to learn. But I'm happy with where I'm at. And if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to the point that you're not enjoying the instrument, you're probably doing it wrong. And just chill and enjoy it. And just the fact that like you have a guitar and you can play guitar, be happy with that, and then make some music and vibe. You do know that having a tuner on the head while playing is a douche move, right? Use your tuner pedal. Here we go again with the tuner on the headstock thing. I actually should have thought that I should have had a couple tuners on this headstock just as a salty response to this. Who cares? Like, they're clip-on tuners. They clip on the headstock. Why would I take the tuner off of the headstock just to like promote that headstock a little more? I think the whole tuner on the headstock gatekeeping is silly. And it's like, where am I gonna put it? Like, it's in the studio here. I'm just gonna put it like in a drawer? Am I gonna put it on the ground? Am I gonna clip it to something that's not a guitar that I can't tune? That's just stupid. Man playing on guitar very bad. Man leaving comment very dumb. To be dismissive of the standard open D is fine for a strummer, but arpeggio of that open D with fingerpicking with hammer-ons and pull-offs in various ways will get attention. I'm sorry, but this is not high-end guitar instruction, though it has little good tips. Well, you know what? We can't all be the Cheesecake Factory of guitar instruction. Sometimes you have to go eat at Applebee's, and I'm your guy. Listening homework this week, super bummed. My favorite rapper of all time, MF Doom, passed away, I guess a couple months ago, and we just found out this last week. I love this guy. This guy's like the best. I think a lot of people are kind of getting hip to just how influential this guy was. I think the headline was like your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. 100%. I love MF Doom. I'm gonna link you to probably one of my favorite like hip hop tracks all time. It's like a 07 remix by Danger Mouse with Sia in it. Somersault. It's like the flow is just fantastic. It's super musical. I think he was just like such a musical rapper, and it's just a bummer. I love all the stuff that he did with Danger Mouse. Danger Doom is like kind of like a slept on album in like his discography, in my opinion. But definitely check him out and really just pay homage because awesome musician that sadly is gone too soon. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.